Well, welcome back, everybody, to our bonus reel conversation here with our friends from CyLab at Carnegie Mellon, talking about cybersecurity in smart manufacturing. So, guys, let's just jump right back into it. Conrad, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah, we had some interesting questions there in the queue. So, Michael, I want to ask you a question. Some of these initiatives you have going on, we didn't talk much about new equipment versus legacy equipment, and are you guys doing something about securing these legacy equipment that might not have all this security built in and methods to connect?
Yes, absolutely, Conrad. So we mentioned the IoT at CyLab initiative, and for that, we're really focusing based off of the input from our industry sponsors, which is Amazon Web Services, AT&T, Infineon Technologies, and Nokia Bell Labs. So four very big companies with a lot of resources have told us we need to focus on industrial IoT this year and this very question about legacy and greenfield devices. So one of the things that we're doing is taking a look at some of the technologies that will allow us to not just bypass the legacy equipment, but use the networking to really go after and as a last line of defense to be able to secure those things. And I think Vyas can talk a lot more details about how we're doing that.
Yep, so that's actually a great question, right? So one of the things that's been useful talking to industry folks and the practitioners is sort of insight into these operational problems, right? So we can put all these cool recommendations saying, hey, use the latest software, upgrade them, patch them, use the latest crypto. But the reality of the market is, okay, you may have like $1 million machinery from 10, 15 years ago that is not patchable, that's not updatable, but still needs to run. And even if the patch is available, it may interfere with your current process. So you may not be willing to do it. And this actually already happens in IT. It's only going to be worse in the sort of the smart manufacturing sector. And this is kind of where the sort of the self-healing or the autonomous healing in the network piece comes in handy, right? So even if the product itself is not secure or the product is a legacy device that cannot be patched, you might be able to retrofit security in a lightweight manner at the edge of the network. So imagine I give you like a trusted gateway that can add like a patching functionality, knowing that there is a problem in this device, but I can block it at the network before the vulnerability or the exploit reaches the device, your sort of manufacturing device. Could be a very powerful way to deal with the legacy devices as well. Of course, we also need to do the work on what are the recommendations for building future product roadmaps, but we can't just leave the legacy equipment to sort of out for the attackers to exploit freely.
Conrad, you wanted to go down? Yeah.
So we're going to have flaws. I just want to, something we're not used to in manufacturing, right? We buy a machine, set it up, and forget about it, you know. And but at home, we're used to applying patches all the time, and I think that's what you were talking about. That in manufacturing, we're going to have to get used to some of these ways of dealing with IT, and that's going to be a reality, and that we shouldn't be afraid of that reality.
And in fact, I think some of the recommendations from the NIST frameworks are all about like how these IoT devices or these OT equipment should come with authenticated mechanisms for applying upgrades and updates, right? So you could have a software update for, say, for example, for your car, but if the update is not authenticated, it's not coming from the manufacturer, then anybody can take over your machine. So there are recommendations for having like trusted or authenticated updates. First, you need to have the update mechanism. And second, make sure the update mechanism is actually authenticated or trusted. And those are the kind of recommendations that are coming out from NIST and other folks.
Well, and so we talked offline before coming on here, guys. You know, I want to talk about the rolling this out to the masses, right, to the small to medium-sized manufacturers. So now a good time to talk, or Conrad, did you want to dig deeper into any particular area?
No, I think that's a great point. How do we make sure that security is not just for the large corporation that can afford an army of people, of IT people working on it?
That's our mandate here at CESMII, right? I mean, we have to take these smart solutions, and even, I mean, you talked earlier, Vyas, about inexpensive sensors. right? That's part of the charter of CESMII, is to drive down the cost of the sensor technologies, higher fidelity. And so it's got to be, it's got to be cost effective, so it's affordable for folks, but man, it better be secure. And everything that we are doing has to be built on secure infrastructure, or we're out of business before we even start. So I know, Michael, you had some ideas. Can you talk about what you guys are doing and the applicability to making this available to manufacturers of all sizes?
Yeah, absolutely. So while we're working with industry tech giants, they have the resources to really help us understand the problem and fun, interesting research that can help solve the problems. But that said, they're not involved within it just for themselves. They recognize security as a team sport. And what's good for AWS and AT&T and Nokia and Infineon is entire secure infrastructure. So they're looking at their customers, who are small, medium businesses, small manufacturers, medium manufacturers. And one of the things that we're doing with our industrial IoT testbed and initiative, there's a commitment to open source technologies. So again, CMU and CyLab and our sponsors aren't looking just to create security research that we can just use for our own commercial purposes, because really we need to look down the road and solve the problem for everyone. And that's why there's been a commitment to open source the key technologies that comes out of our research initiative.
But wait a minute. So open source. So I immediately think if it's open source, that means people know the code and they can hack it, right? I mean, how does that help us?
Yeah, so I think this is actually an interesting sort of philosophical debate, right? And it's been going around for a while. So one of the sort of tenets of security is do not believe in security by obscurity, and having like more eyes or more tools look at your code makes it more secure in the longer term. So if I do have open source, we can actually run like sort of other open source security assessment and frameworks and tools and fuzzing tools to make sure these are like free of vulnerabilities, or at least there's a commitment to having an ecosystem that goes and fixes the problems in the open source, not just being at the mercy of the sort of the vendor who may not have an incentive to patch it if it's not a product that's being commercialized and so on. I think the open source part is good because it sort of lowers the barrier of adoption. And it also gets more people looking at it and collaborating on the ecosystem to make it really successful. To your other point about sort of low cost and sort of lowering the barrier of entry for small and medium enterprises and manufacturers to benefit from these technologies, that's a great point. And that actually, that's something that's been bugging me and a bunch of us at CMU and CyLab for a while. And there's a few different things we're doing on that front. So one of the things I would say is so I mentioned this sort of security gateway that we can add to a network or an infrastructure. So imagine I can give you like a Raspberry Pi. It's like a $50 device, and that can sort of magically retrofit security to your environment. So we're trying to build that kind of capability, a trusted gateway on a $50 platform. So, and that will sort of secure a small to medium scale infrastructure for you. So that's one thing on the research front that we are doing. There's a couple of other ongoing efforts that I think it's worth mentioning here. So one is that, so what we do know is that sort of the large teams to go and manage their infrastructures. But the reality is the small and medium manufacturers and other deployments don't have this large IT team. They do have, which is cool, is they have their community that they can build on, right? They have collaborators, peers. They can go to forums like Stack Exchange or Stack Overflow. And one of the things we're actually developing is ways to help the small and medium businesses collaborate better in sort of configuring and operating these sort of small deployments. So imagine I give you sort of a tool where you can create a digital twin of your infrastructure that helps a collaborator debug a problem or suggest a fix to your problem, and do this in a privacy preserving way. Or imagine that there is a way in which you can outsource like a specific management or a debugging problem in a trusted way to a third-party provider, and sort of do so in what the security folks call least privilege. That is, I give you the minimum amount of capability or access to fix this particular problem and nothing else. So those are sort of new sort of research capabilities we are working on that can sort of that's focusing on the small and medium folks as opposed to the large providers, right? The large providers can help themselves, right? But nobody's doing anything for the small folks. And these are the kind of capabilities we think we can provide to help the small and medium businesses develop and benefit from these technologies.
So are we going to get to a point, because I'm wondering how much of this cost is going to be bared by the manufacturers versus the machine vendors, the infrastructure vendors, and are we going to get to a point, like you said, I just buy that appliance, put it in my factory, and I can trust that all these devices comply with it? How far are we from that, or versus a manufacturer having to worry about putting the right infrastructure in place?
I think it's a great question, right? So I think this is actually an ecosystem problem. It is not just a manufacturer problem. It is not just a sort of a factory floor problem. It is not just an IT problem. It is an ecosystem problem. And there has to be multiple people working together. And that's kind of where the CyLab initiative or our industry partners or the other partnerships that Michael mentioned, and even like what you're doing with CESMII, right? Sort of creating that ecosystem is critical, because it's not a one provider answer or a one perspective answer. It's an ecosystem perspective, and we have to collaborate to address and solve these problems together.
Good thing Conrad is our director of ecosystem and workforce development.
Yeah, talking my language, Jerry. It is an ecosystem problem, so I love to hear that.
For sure. For sure. Well,
And,
guys, is there anywhere else that you wanted to go? Any particular questions or topics, or want to go deeper on any particular area?
There's so many. I mean, SDN versus DNS, encryption versus, firewalls, IP protection. I feel that this topic, we're going to have more sessions and deeper dives with multiple experts. But maybe we covered enough today. What do you guys think, Michael, Vyas?
Yeah, and just kind of going back to the ecosystem, we really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you guys and work with you and your audience. And the smart manufacturing innovation platform that you guys are working on, that's part of the ecosystem that we think can be beneficial to a bigger audience.
Yeah, I think too, to your point, Conrad, whether we continue discussion here like this, we have other dedicated sessions. If you guys have existing sessions that you run or classes that you hold, or things like that, I mean, I think the synergies of bringing them together, or us just referencing and continuing to let the ecosystem know that such things are going on is critically important.
Yeah, let's keep evolving that ecosystem. And you have our speakers' contact information there. You have our contact information there. If this is a topic of interest to you, let us know. We'll get you involved.
Excellent. Gentlemen, appreciate the work that you're doing, the partnerships that you're managing, the work that you're doing for all of us. So thank you very, very much. And we'll let you get on with your day.
Thanks for the opportunity. We'd love to connect further, and if there are more questions. Thank you.
Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you all.
Thank you.